Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Karen Can, and I'm a holistic physician and acupuncturist and the author of the #1 bestseller, Guide to Healing Chronic Pain, A Holistic Approach. And today's webinar is about nutritional healing for chronic issues such as fibromyalgia and chronic pain. And I'm really excited today to host this nutritional webinar because it's with my friend and colleague, Sabine Weber. And she is a functional nutritionist, holistic nutritionist right here in Lake Placid. We are so lucky to have her here. So on May 10th this year, we held a day-long workshop with two of my other colleagues, and that was natural healing strategies for people with fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome. And Sabina was out of town during that time, so we are so happy that she is here with us today to give us some really great pointers about what people with fibromyalgia, and I used to be one of them, and people with chronic pain can do in their diet to support their healing, to boost their healing. And she has a wealth of knowledge, and we're so lucky to have her here. And we're going to be showing some slides a little bit later. Just so you know, if you're just joining us, there is on the right-hand side a chat box. And I have enabled the chat box, meaning that you can actually type some notes. So if you would like to say hi, you can type in hi in the chat box if you like. Now I'm going to be manning the chat box, so if you have some pressing questions and you want to stop Sabine and ask her the question, I'll be reading the chat box while she's doing the presentation, and then at an opportune time I will ask her if it's okay if we ask this question. So please feel free to ask questions. That's what this is about. And we want you to get as much information as possible so that you can institute these positive practices in your life as soon as possible so you can heal better. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Sabine Weber. Hi, Sabina. Thank you for doing this for us.
Hi, Karen. Thank you so much for inviting me to do this with you.
Yeah, my pleasure. So I guess we'll start with the slides, and then if there's any questions, I will let you know. How's that sound?
Okay, great.
So we have some folks saying hello, so hello back.
Hello. And as I go into the slides, I'll mention a little bit more about myself also.
Perfect.
Can you see that?
Yes, looks good.
Okay. So I just wanted to mention a little bit about myself. I am a registered dietitian, so I do have a traditional background, but I also have a holistic background in mind-body medicine and functional nutrition. And most recently, I've just become a certified food and spirit practitioner, which has been really great. So I'll talk a little bit about that today too. I got into nutrition in the 80s when really the nutrition, our food supply, I think, really changed in the 80s, and our knowledge about nutrition was very different back then. And I was in a search for really finding out how to help my clients and bring myself into balance. And I think that's where over the years, I've come to work in a different area, a non-traditional part of the field, because I feel like I get better results with my clients and helping people through this type of approach. So we are going to talk about balancing the whole self. Also stress as it relates to nutrition, anti-inflammatory foods, and gut function, all things related to helping heal chronic fatigue, chronic pain, fibromyalgia. So first thing to think about, have diet, exercise, and supplements failed you? Because that's typically the first thing that people do. I'm going to go on a diet, I'm going to start exercising, I'm going to take these supplements because they're supposed to help me. But they don't always help. And that's why we need to look at the big picture of why just making these lifestyle changes don't help. It's actually a bigger picture than just that. We want to think about balance, and not just balancing our food, but balancing our lives, balancing our environment inside and out. So we are able to actually receive the benefits of the nutrition, which I'll go into that a little bit more. So really thinking about your life. We want to create the environment on the outside and the inside that's going to help balance our bodies on the outside and the inside. There's a lot of knowledge now about the connection between the mind and the gut, the connection between the mind and the body. 70% of our immune system's in our gut. We know there's a lot of knowledge on stress and the physical aspects of our body. So looking at how we're living our lives, what's going on in our outside environment and our inside environment are the most important things to evaluate so we can actually get the benefits of nutrition. And I know that Karen is actually doing a class on stress reduction, so that's going to be a big part of healing also. Think about this. Think about energy. What energy do you notice when you think about food? So just sit for a minute. And what does food bring to you? Does it bring excitement, stress, sadness, anxiety, health, love? What are your thoughts? And when you think about that, do you live the same way you think about food? So that's where we need to think about where our lives are. Is our relationship with food anxious and stressed, just as our lives are? So without bringing these two things in balance, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult to heal. Because what I'm getting at are things that actually create the inflammatory response in the body that are related to inflammation and pain and not being able to heal and different gut issues. So that's where we want to think about your energy and food. So positive energy and good nutrition is what we want. We want to think about those two things together. That's when you're going to get the best results. You're not going to get the same results if you have great energy but poor nutrition, negative energy and good nutrition, negative energy and poor nutrition. So we want to look at the balance of our outside and our inside. So thinking about the energy that we get from our food. What is this picture? What kind of feeling does this picture bring to you? Or
Those
this?
Pretty happy chickens.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of feeling does this bring to you?
Oh.
There's a lot of research on there's new upcoming research on the energy we get from our food in this type of environment also. We're also eating the stress hormones that, the different things that are brought on from raising livestock this way. So that's something to think about too. I just threw this in because this was from 2004. But we were thinking about inflammation back in 2004. I think it was 2004. So we've known for a long time that inflammation is one of the big things in relationship to chronic disease. So why haven't we completely been able to overcome that? And when you think about inflammation, when you think about your life and how you're living your life, this is just a cut. What happens if you continually scratch this cut? That you're not allowing it to heal. So you need to calm that environment. You need to calm the environment around the gut. So you could put all the ointment on it you want, but if you keep scratching it, it's probably not going to heal. So that's the same thing with supplements sometimes. You know, we need to create that change in our bodies to be receptive to the food and to the supplements and the environment. So that's why we want to examine inflammation, how we live, what do we do that supports inflammation. So thinking about our lives and the environment inside our body. What do we eat that support inflammation? So those are the two areas that we want to focus on. So on a science end of it, the big contributors to inflammation: high sugar diet, high fat diet, which I'll go more into this, more of the wrong fats, not, I prefer a higher fat diet, so it's really the wrong types of fats that bring on the inflammation. The food allergens, foods that promote bacterial overgrowth, not getting enough fiber, not getting enough phytonutrients, not getting enough exercise, vitamin D deficiency, fatty acid imbalances, which is imbalances in the wrong types of fats, vitamin and mineral deficiencies, toxin accumulation, so too many outside factors that our body doesn't know what to do with too, and emotional stress and toxic relationships. So these are things that can actually trigger more inflammation in the body. And I want to what?
That you put the toxic relationships in there.
Yeah.
People don't think about inflammation in terms of relationships, and I think it is extremely important. So that's wonderful. Thank you for including that.
Yeah, I think people really need to and that's where I'm going with the food and spirit. People really need to evaluate how they live and what's happening in their lives that are creating inflammation, because you aren't going to get the benefits of changing the nutrition without changing the whole self. Is really the idea. Although there's a lot of wonderful parts to nutrition that we want to make changes to, but we really need to start from the outside in and the inside out. So part of my training is a food and spirit practitioner, which is a new certification program by Dr. Deanna Minnick, which is an amazing program. And so if people are interested in looking for a food and spirit practitioner, you can let me know, and I can refer to if you don't live in the area and you're looking for somebody. Looking at food and spirit, we want to look at balancing the whole self. So we look at 7 aspects of life, which pretty much correlate with the chakras. And the 2 that are really out of balance when we look at inflammation, adrenal fatigue, chronic pain are our root and our fire. The root is related to how connected we are to family, community, tribe, social situations, how grounded we feel to the earth, to the environment, how grounded we feel in life in general. And that's also related to our structure, meaning how good is our foundation, our structure, our skeletal system, our adrenal glands, our immune system. And that's where the types of foods that come into play would be protein, root vegetables, minerals, and other foods that may help with our immune system. This is, I know when Karen did the fibromyalgia talk, she had Kathy Hoffmeyer talk about how to make bone broth. And this is this group of people who are unbalanced in their root area. That bone broth is a really that's great to focus on. It's often people who if you actually have an underactive root, meaning you may not be getting enough protein, you have skeletal issues, you have more than, you almost have adrenal fatigue, where your adrenals have just been overworked. Usually there's some poor absorption of minerals. That's where that bone broth can really help in this situation with the root. So that's an area that I'd look at. You know, we want to look at how people are. We want to look at how grounded somebody is, and then we also want to look at their fire or their power aspect, which looks at how is someone able to sustain their energy. This is normally, in a normal situation, people are able to, you can handle the energy you take in, where when there's an imbalance in this, you're taking in a lot more energy than you're able to handle, so it leads to burnout. It's usually someone that's eating a lot of sugar. It's usually someone that also will have a lot of inflammation, like the root. So we want to look at how are these people fueling themselves. You know, we want to make sure that you're getting healthy carbohydrates. You're not using the carbohydrates that are, you know, the processed carbohydrates, the sugars, that type of thing. But then we also want to look at the balance of your life. You know, what's coming in, and it's usually the people that are chronic overworkers.
I know that one.
Yeah. So, so these are, you know, ways that we look at helping people balance their life and also balance the nutrition around it. And if you study chakras a little bit, they do correlate with the chakras. But this program is put together in a way where, you know, I can help people balance their lives and look at balancing their food based on the 7 aspects, and it's a really, really powerful way to look at it.
Sabina, I wanted to mention I watched the movie Emotion, which just came out I think a month ago, and there was a guy on there. Now he made me laugh because he had the funniest looking mustache, but he was talking about the colors of food, and he mentioned chakras and about how the different colors, you know, can affect our well-being, and I think it's really interesting that there's like a correlation to what you're talking about. Like, for example, my first chakra, because I had fibromyalgia and adrenal fatigue before, and I really liked, I really was resonating with a lot of protein. I had to eat a lot of meat, actually, to feel good, and like root vegetables, so I think that's kind of interesting.
Yep. And usually that's the more red foods would be with the root also.
Yeah, like beets.
That's true. Yep. And it is interesting if we just pick another one like the flow, it's more orange colored foods, and there would be fats and oils, and it's how they actually, you know, that can be a little out of balance too with someone with fibromyalgia or chronic pain. Because they're usually people that don't get the right amount of fats or the type of fats. But the flow is related to movement in the body, so water and moisture and fats and orange-colored food. So it's very, I think the science of nutrition is changing, and my teacher in Food and Spirit, Dr. Deanna Minnick, felt that there will be a big change soon it's not just the biology of nutrition, it's moving into physics. So, you know, that's where I think that's where we're finding the most help in healing people too, and helping people heal themselves, is really looking at that energy component and how they're living. I'm doing, I just have to say this one thing before I go on, as we're talking about physics, and there is one experiment that I'm doing, and I'm using quinoa, but a lot of people do it with white rice. You actually put, you take a jar of, you cook the rice or the quinoa or the oatmeal or whatever the same way. You put them both in a jar, the same exact environment, and you write hateful words on one jar, and you write loving words on the other. And everyone who has done I've seen the experiment done so far, the hate jar grows mold first, much faster. It's very interesting. I'm in the middle of the experiment right now, so that's kind of where, And that's a good point to make right now, with because we want to think about our energy and our own healing. So where is that? You know, if we can send that kind of an energy to rice in a jar, you know, how is energy in our own lives affecting our own bodies too? So it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, and I saw another movie that talked about Dr. Masaru Emoto's work on the water crystals, and they had all these Japanese kids doing the same thing in school, you know, with their sticky rice and, you know, putting a label with hateful words on one and then loving words on another, and they just kept, you know, these two jars separate, and they just kept thinking hateful things, you know, to the one jar. And you're right, it totally degraded, and it was gross and disgusting. And the other rice, which they gave loving thoughts to, became actually fermented and actually was really sweet smelling and not like disgusting. It was amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful. So that's where we want to think about the stress response too, how the stress, because controlling stress is going to be one area that's going to help us receive our nutrition a little bit better too. And so they're usually people who are unbalanced in the root and the fire aspects, often have a lot of stress in their lives. And we know that chronic stress is associated with our body losing its ability to regulate the inflammatory response. So it's very important to think about our lives and how much stress there's going on in there when we are in the process of trying to heal. And just the fight or flight response in relationship to stress. People in general, when they are under a lot of stress, may be constantly secreting those stress hormones, constantly in a place where they're being chased by a wild animal, where so those stress hormones are always active, and that's the damage that happens over in the long run, is that not allowing that stress response to relax. So that's where some of these practices come into play when you're, and I just like to talk about them because they do help with receiving your nutrition better and calming your system, because we're looking at decreasing inflammation. So we want you to absorb nutrients better. We want you to calm the gut. We want you to chew your food better. So these calming techniques do help balance cortisol levels, which is that stress hormone that can be related to, it can definitely be related to too much inflammation. It can be related to inability to control your blood sugar, because it's related, because there's a relationship with insulin. So people may, you're secreting a lot of cortisol, you may have trouble with weight gain, you may have trouble with blood sugar, and there's those whole inflammation pathways. And relaxing the sympathetic nervous system, which is that's the part of the nervous system that we want to calm down. So that's some things to think about in your life. Are you doing any of these things? Are you exercising? And it doesn't have to be, I like to say, it doesn't have to be you have to be out there running a marathon or doing Ironman. It can be maybe exercise for you is somebody that maybe it's going to be yoga, some kind of movement where you're moving the body. But you don't want it to be a stressful movement. You don't want it to be something that brings you bad energy. That's something to really think about, and that's what really causes people to maybe not be successful with exercise or even a diet program or something, because it's something because you're not vested in it, or it's stressful for different ways. You don't like the food, it's an impossible program, whatever it is. If that energy, if you're not vested in it, then that's where that difficult part is too, and that's why we want to look at balancing the whole life too. Breathing can help decrease that stress response. I do one thing. I have a biofeedback machines where I hook up people's fingers to little electrodes, and I do a little guided imagery exercise with them, and their temperature goes up because when you relax, the blood goes back into your extremities.
Mm.
Yeah, so, and you can actually see them relaxing, and they can see their temperature going up, so they can actually physically see that these techniques work. So it's a nice thing to play with.
That I was going to mention, Sabina, that two things. One is that I didn't, understand this till recently, that some people with adrenal fatigue, so they're the adrenal glands or stress handling glands are kind of pooping out, that they will use exercise to almost force the stress response so they feel normal, but then they crash. So they're actually addicted to exercise, and if they don't exercise, they actually feel depressed, which I thought was really, really interesting. That was a new awareness for me.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, and the other thing that I was going to mention is, about the feedback, the biofeedback. They actually have computer games now. It's endorsed by Deepak Chopra, and it's called The Wild Divine, is I think the name of the company, with these little feedback things on the fingers, and it teaches adults and children how to control their breath and their energy in order to make the game work. So it's sort of like a fantasy, and you go to different places in the game, and you have to make the balloons fly up, or you have to shoot the arrow at the target, but if you're breathing wrong, the arrow, the bow goes a different direction. It's actually pretty challenging, but it's kind of cool that, I mean, I don't like the whole, it's in front of the computer idea because all the electromagnetic radiation, but other than that, I think it's a really cool way to teach people creatively how to use the breath and that relaxation response to train it.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds great, and that's really missing in many people's lives. People don't really understand how to, you know, breathe, live mindfully. Okay. Well, I'm going to throw this little part in here before I go into the nutrition, because when we look at balancing our environment, when we look at looking at our lives, when we look at decreasing stress, sleep is huge, because sleep, if you're not getting sleep, it's going to make the nutrition so much harder because it changes so many hormones in our body. It does increase inflammation, it increases cortisol, it changes, it's really, it makes some changes in some of our hunger hormones too. So it actually, it mimics starvation and hunger in those changes. And then it also activates the reward system, so you're carbohydrate craving all the time. So that is, so with that scenario, it's really difficult to decrease inflammation.
I did not know that. Can you go back to that slide again for a sec? The
Yeah.
whole word activates the reward system and carbohydrate craving. What's the biochemical basis of that, or is that a hormonal pituitary thing or cortisol thing?
Yeah, there are some specific hunger hormones that are related to hunger and like leptin and ghrelin. I have to. Those are different hormones that are related to hunger and starvation, and they are altered if somebody's not getting enough sleep.
Oh, that is fascinating. That is really fascinating. That's very cool.
Yeah.
There is a question for you.
Okay.
She was talking about when you were mentioning the biofeedback and the fingers getting a little bit warmer, and that's a good thing. Nurit is saying that when she's sleeping, she's wondering why the temperature going up is a good sign, because what if she's waking up, burning, her fingers feel burning, and then it subsides after she wakes up. I'm guessing that is not a beneficial symptom of being relaxed.
Yeah. Burning isn't typically a symptom, but it's just your hands being comfortably warm. The blood, the blood flow is going back into your extremities. So the burning, I'm not sure what that would actually be.
Okay, wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Yeah. So when you're looking at creating the so we're looking at creating the right environment inside and outside. So when we look at the typical westernized diet, or otherwise known as SAD, standard American diet, high saturated fats are related, or trans fats specifically, they're related to more inflammation. There's studies under there. Low fiber, high refined grains related to inflammation. High refined sugars related to inflammation. So the refined diets, the processed diets in the standardized American diet is totally related to inflammation. And when I'm talking about, I'm not talking about naturally occurring saturated fats, the man-made saturated fats. So the characteristics that we've changed in our diet have typically been the macronutrient composition, which means we've changed the carbohydrate, protein, fat ratios. We're changing back now, but diets became very high sugar, high carbohydrate with the westernized diet because of food processing. The fatty acid composition changed, so we weren't getting fats in their natural form. We were getting processed fats. We were getting hydrogenized corn oil and soybean oil in our foods, which increases inflammation. Food processing also micronutrient density takes out a lot of our vitamins and minerals. It changes the glycemic load. So once you take a grain and make it a flour, you're releasing those starches, which actually turns it into sugar more faster. Also, when we started processing grains, we were throwing out the germ and the bran and just using the endosperm, which is a really starchy part of the grain. And the least nutrient dense. So we're taking out a lot of the micronutrients from those grains and using just the starch, which was typical in our diet. The fiber content was changed. The sodium-potassium ratio was changed, meaning that we get a lot of sodium, not enough potassium. Acid-base balance changed, so we're not getting enough alkaline foods, getting too many acidic foods, which I'll go over that a little bit more. So processing, how does that change food? It changes the glycemic load. We get too much food turning into blood sugar. It changes the composition of fats to make them less healthy or void of. So the fat intake that we've been getting with the processed foods, much less healthy. We get more synthetic nutrients than the naturally occurring nutrients because with a lot of grains, nutrients are sprayed back in. So they're removed in processing, and then we get synthetic ones. Void of soluble and insoluble fibers, which are really needed for keeping our gut healthy, detoxification, lots of things. Void of plant sterols and stanols. I like to throw this one in because these are components of plants that actually help pull the cholesterol out of our body. And I'm not as worried about cholesterol as much as we were, but these are things that are naturally occurring in plants, and we are extracting it from the plants now and putting it in margarine so people can eat margarine that helps lower your cholesterol. So there's there's all these weird little things that we've done in food processing, but we put back some other way. Void of naturally occurring phytochemicals and antioxidants needed for disease prevention. And these are we'll talk a bit more about that. Usually higher in sodium, man-made saturated fats, and usually high in additives, preservatives, pesticides to maintain shelf life. So that's all producing inflammation.
What? Something about the sodium. I started using Himalayan crystal salt a couple of years ago, And I think it's really interesting. The idea was that salt, like that we buy at the store, like the table salt, was devoid of its natural minerals and highly processed, whereas Himalayan crystal salt or Celtic sea salt, for example, is unprocessed, and that certain people actually need more salt, and that salt isn't bad for everyone.
Right.
Uh, More like the table salt is toxic probably to everyone, and so I know in processed food they just use, I'm assuming, table salt unless it says unrefined Celtic sea salt or Himalayan crystal salt. So I just wanted you to,
Yeah.
kind of, mention, is that your understanding as well, or how does that work?
Yeah, then there's a big difference between using a little bit of Himalayan sea salt than a high processed food diet could have 10,000 milligrams of sodium in it without a problem. You know,
Wow.
um, so there's a big difference between preserving food with sodium than sprinkling a little sea salt or sea salt with minerals on your food too, which is fine, uh, or cooking with it. Big difference in the total amounts of sodium that you're going to be getting.
Ah, thank you.
And the thing is too, it's the processed foods. It's just such an imbalance of we're getting so much sodium and we're just missing some of those other important minerals because of the processing. So another big thing of diet and inflammation would be the refined flours and sugars, the lacking of the fiber, but also the omega-3 to omega-6 ratio. When you look at the processed foods, you're usually using some kind of soybean, corn oil, vegetable oil that are very high in omega-6s, and these omega-6s can, in that form and in that amount, can trigger more inflammation. So the processing has changed our normal fatty acid balance of food, and to create more inflammation. So when we look at food and creating an environment in our bodies that are going to decrease inflammation, we want to look at plants and pigments, we want to look at herbs and spices, we want to get an oil change, so we want different types of fats, and we want alkaline foods. And I'm not focusing on protein as much in here. I did a little bit in the root, but so I'm not going into it as much, but that in the oil change will cover a little bit of the grass-fed meats and that type of thing are the most important ones to choose because that is the fatty acid composition. So this is a handout that I like to use with people that just discusses the importance of the pigments of the food. So it doesn't go into all the chemical names, but we know that there are thousands and thousands of phytochemicals in plant foods. And these phytochemicals are related to decreasing inflammation, preventing cancer, protecting cells, those types of things. We also know that people don't get anywhere near enough plant foods that they should be getting. I like to talk to people about how many colors are they getting a day. There's a study on fibromyalgia and osteoarthritis with cherries. So it's that pigment, it's the red pigment or the purple pigment or the blue pigment or the green pigment. There's components of these pigments that have a very anti-inflammatory effect. And that's another thing, when we were talking about the chakras, another thing you want to think about is how colorful is your meal, because if you're eating the same thing every day, you're probably not getting, we know that these plant foods have thousands and thousands of phytochemicals in them, plant chemicals that are related to, actually changing our gene expression. So that's like one of the biggest things that I think that people have a hard time grasping and really have a hard time getting enough too, because a lot of people don't know what to do with them. So, and that's a whole new thing. It's not a new area, but it's an underused area, I guess, because people aren't really thinking about eating in color. And this is from um, a survey done. It's the same survey that collects the data for obesity. And typically, and I just wanted to put this on here because this was 2011, only California and Oregon people get more than 1.8. They eat a fruit or vegetable more than 1.8 times a day.
Wow, so that's amazing. Well, and,
yeah.
And what's with New Hampshire?
Yeah, New Hampshire too. Right. Yeah, but Vermont, New Hampshire beats Vermont. So
wow.
If you look at, I mean, people are getting not even 2 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. That's a, I've got another study, I don't have it on here, that shows how that most people don't get enough colors. Do you think you eat blue, red, green every day?
Right.
Yeah, and there is a lot of people use some of those deep, rich pigments to decrease inflammation. So blueberries, cherries, pomegranates, those deep, rich colors have a lot of anti-inflammatory properties. So they are associated with a decreased risk of chronic disease. We do know that plants can change our gene expression. We also, there has been a study done on tart cherries for people who suffer from pain and inflammation associated with fibromyalgia and osteoarthritis. So it is studied more now, and people do take cherry supplements. But again, when you look at taking cherry supplements, that's why I want people to think about not just taking a supplement, but actually changing your inflammatory environment inside and out. And that's when you're going to see the benefits of the nutrition the most. And I think people get discouraged because they'll go, you take glucosamine, you take take a supplement that's out there, like people are taking turmeric right now, which, turmeric, there's a lot of great research on it being very anti-inflammatory, and it can help. But it's not the only thing. I think people have to take a look at the whole picture. So other anti-inflammatory herbs and spices, too, big ones, would be like cayenne, capsaicin, red chilies, ginger, turmeric, bromelain, cinnamon, garlic, and some things for the gut, too, calming the gut, fennel, the whole peppermint family. Green tea has a lot of anti-inflammatory properties, too. So those are just some herbs and spices to think about, thinking about cooking with every day and using them in tea and just making them a part of your life instead of trying to always take them in a supplement form, too. So fat-free, what happened when everything went fat-free?
We got fatter.
Yeah. Yeah, we did. But also that's when the whole food supply changed, and that's when a lot of inflammation happened too. So that's true. When everything went fat-free, if you look at back in 1990, there were a few states that had 10 to 14% over. These statistics are people who are over obesity with BMI over 30. So they're considered obese. People who are considered obese, no state was over 15%. So by 2010, no state was under 20%. So, and if you look at the new statistics in 2012, they've even taken off the lower numbers. There's not, they've taken off 15% and lower, and no state, yeah. So still they're moving up. They're adding numbers on the higher end. So they've added a greater than 35%. So still, there's no state below 20%.
Wow.
Yeah. So since 1980, sugar consumption increased from 40 to 140 pounds per year. So we know that Sugar does create inflammation, but it also replaces a lot of nutrient-dense foods. So, with people with pain and inflammation, chronic fatigue, we're trying to get more nutrients and vitamins and minerals in them. But they've had a lot of times people have had a diet that has been lacking a lot of essential nutrients. Usually higher blood sugar or insulin levels, which can create more inflammation. Not having those phytonutrients, not having the fiber. Also, the sugar feeds the bad bugs in our gut too. So if we're constantly eating a lot of starchy things and sugar, and we haven't created that right environment in our gut, we're feeding the wrong things. Dietary fats were changed back then too. And one thing that, I talk about the importance of fat. I usually, I'm not somebody who wants people to be on a low-fat diet, unless there's some medical issue where you'd have to be. But it's very underrated. And what happened is that people were going all fat-free, high sugar, and basically our bodies and our cells are paying for it. They're structural. They are a major component of every cell membrane of our body. They're critical for proper cell functioning from cell to cell. Some research has shown that that's omega-3s. They may benefit rheumatoid arthritis, inflammatory bowel disease. There are certain inflammatory properties of omega-3s that they may help reduce inflammatory conditions where you can reduce some of your corticosteroids. That's some research on that, which a lot of people try to do that. They try to, use some omega-3s in place of steroids, which is great. They're related to decreasing our C-reactive protein, which is an inflammatory marker in our body. So the right kinds of fats in our body, having more whole food fats, even a lot of nuts and seeds too, a lot of monounsaturated fats has been shown to help decrease that C-reactive protein. I like the last part on this though. Cholesterol, phosphatidylcholine, phosphatidylserine, and inositol. They're part of. They are involved in our detoxification pathways. They're important. They're important in cell membrane and signaling, and they're found in egg yolks, shellfish, nuts, seeds, beans. But I think it's interesting because they're in our foods. But these two, the phosphatidylcholine and the phosphatidylserine, are two supplements that you'll find in brain health supplements. So a lot of people sometimes, you're losing your memory, you look for a good brain health supplement. And they are extremely expensive in supplement form. People will buy a brain health supplement for $75. I mean, I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, they are expensive. It's true.
They are, and there must be some type of, I'm not sure why they're that expensive, but changing our diet, we're going to be getting more of these types of things in our foods. Eat the egg yolks.
Yeah, there's been a lot of bad press about eggs, and certainly I hated eggs as a child. I was forced to eat eggs every morning, and of course my parents would get the cheapest eggs they could find at the grocery store and overcook them, and I just felt they were so gross. And now that I have farmers, local farmers, and I buy their eggs, the yolks are like orangey yellow, not just this pale yellow color, and they taste fantastic. What a huge difference.
Yeah. Yep.
Sabina, what about, you haven't mentioned, what about, I heard a lot of good things potentially about coconut oil or olive oil. Is that one on your good oil list?
Yeah, coconut oil, yep, I just did get an oil change, so those are two things that I would definitely recommend. Definitely, you always want to avoid the trans fats and the hydrogenated fats. The majority of oils, I have a list here of a majority of oils, but the two oils that people cook with, I would say cold pressed extra virgin olive oil and coconut oil. And olive oil would be low heat cooking, like sauteing. And if you're going to cook at any high heat, it would be coconut oil. Other oils lose stability when you cook them at high heats, especially the polyunsaturated fats. You're creating a different animal there. So you want to give our body less work too, less carcinogens.
What about the old style? Assuming you're getting it from pastured animals, what about pasture raised pork lard or tallow, beef fat or duck fat? What do you think about those saturated fats?
I think they're fine too. I think they're good too. They're different. They have different properties in them that for people with chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia, different. You're going to get some collagen in there. You're going to get some nutrients that are from the animal too that can actually help with healing. So, and they are, as long as I would recommend going with grass-fed, wild game, that type of thing. So you're not getting that the different type of fatty acid. When you're getting, if you're just going out and using regular beef or getting the fat from regular beef, regular cows, factory farm cows, they're usually grass-fed, which that fatty acid composition is different.
You mean grain-fed?
Grain-fed. I'm sorry, what?
You said grain-fed or grass-fed?
The factory farm are grain-fed. Excuse me. We want grass-fed. That fatty acid composition is not as good for us as the grass-fed. So.
And then what about a couple slides back you had about sugar? Like I noticed for me when I used organic honey, my blood sugar would spike and then drop, and I'd feel like having a nap. But then when I ate raw, unpasteurized honey, I didn't get the same reaction.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, honey does have more fructose in it. So the more processed the honey, the more the faster that fructose is going to get into your bloodstream.
Gotcha.
So I also think that the local raw honey would be a little bit better too, especially for people with allergies, things like that. You're getting part of your environment. It can help balance that a little bit too. But honey does have more fructose in it than maple syrup, so that's something to pay attention to if people are feeling something with it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Trans fat free. I just want to mention this because there's a lot of companies out there that are telling you, okay, we use trans fat free oil. We use trans fat, but we're still deep frying it at, 500 degrees or whatever temperature it is. Whenever you heat an oil, just say it went in maybe it went in trans fat free before they heated it, but once you heat it to that high temperature, you're changing that chemical composition of that fat and making it a carcinogen basically, so it is so deep frying is not a good idea no matter what.
You know what? I gotta admit something. If I'm gonna eat junk food,
yeah,
one kind of junk food that I like is potato chips.
Okay.
And I like the crunch. I like the salt, and yeah, I know frying oils is not a good idea. But I don't know. Do you have any alternatives to that? The once in a while thing?
Well, have you ever tried baked chips?
Yeah. Well, I just bought, it's from pastured pork, but I just bought James and I haven't tried it yet because I just got it in today, fried pork rinds fried in pastured lard.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that would be more stable. I was going to say that with the coconut oil too. The lard would be more stable. It does not turn into the same carcinogen that the oils do. So at high heat, it is safer. Just like the coconut oil. Like if you're going to make popcorn and you like and you don't mind the coconut taste, you can make popcorn with oil with some coconut oil.
Oh, I haven't tried that. Well, no, that's not true. There was an oil brand that was organic palm oil and coconut oil, and that was delicious, I gotta tell you.
Yeah, those oils are stable in those high heats, so they're safer.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I feel a little better. I'm not eating it every day, but for a little snack here and there.
Yeah. Um, I know for years and years, everyone always, we've always thought about omega-3s being anti-inflammatory, but it's also the balance of not getting as much omega-6s, getting more omega-3s in the diet, because we weren't getting omega-3s in the diet. Really, we're almost void of it. It was almost all trans fats and omega-6s. So even if you're not taking a supplement, looking at what foods you can do to get it in there, and it can be some from some fish, and it can be some of walnuts, flax seeds, chia seeds, hemp seeds. The average Western diet includes 10 times more omega-6 fatty acids, so than we should really be getting. So that's where that inflammation part comes into play too. Alkaline foods. I mentioned earlier acid-base balance a little bit, or our body requires a pH of about 7.39, a little more alkaline. We are typically, if we have and we should have protein, but if we're eating a lot of protein or a lot of high-fat meats and a lot of dairy and a lot of grain, and we're not eating any plant foods, then we're getting a higher acid diet and not enough foods in the diet to neutralize that acid, not enough alkaline foods. So a higher acid diet has been associated with higher disease rate, specifically cancer, but that's where that balance comes in. So I don't want people to think, and it didn't really come out on the slide that well, I don't want people to think that, you shouldn't have beef, you shouldn't have something. It's where that balance comes in, where maybe people 20, 30, 40 years ago had a problem with the Atkins diet because it was all meat based, and you weren't getting really enough of those alkaline foods, like the plant foods, to buffer that. Where something these days now, the paleo diet is different, because you get healthy proteins, healthy fats, and then you get a lot of plant foods along with it to create that right balance. So that's something to think about. Again, when we're balancing the outside and the inside, it's balancing the acid and the alkaline together, because we don't want one on either side either. But it can create a lot of work for our body if we're just only eating the acid-forming foods.
Sabina, is the ketogenic diet the same as the Atkins diet? I'm not too familiar with it, but I heard it was helping cancer, so thought I'd ask you.
The ketogenic diet, well, a little different. It is a protein-based diet, very high protein, that actually puts our bodies in ketosis. They use it a lot with people with seizures too, with seizure disorders.
Does it have more plants than the Atkins?
You can do it that way with more plants to have it to balance that a little bit. But the protein is you're using a lot less. It's a very low carbohydrate, so they go into ketosis. But you can have more plant. You can balance it to make it a little bit more alkaline for the person. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
So, because you can use a lot of low carb plants on those diets. So food intolerances. Well, we also want to think, a lot of our inflammation does come from our gut. So we do want to, and I'll go through this fast. So thinking about what's going on in our outside environment, our inside environment. So we want to clean it up by going to more of a whole food based diet. And so a lot of things that we just discussed. If that doesn't work, that's where you want to start thinking about some things. What's going on in our gut? that's when we're starting to explore some things. Is it gluten? Is it dairy? Is it sugars? Are we having problems with lactose and fructose? There's something called, there's a whole line of sugars that people have a problem with, and a lot of the times it's related to bacterial overgrowth in the intestine. So there's sometimes people go for further testing to find out if that stuff is happening. IgG food intolerances. Sometimes gluten. Maybe it's not just gluten. Maybe it's maybe it's the processing of the grains. So sometimes sprouted grains work better with people. Sometimes sometimes the sprouted grains can be more inflammatory. So people have to really pay attention to what kind of symptoms they get from food, and play with that a little bit. And working with somebody who can help you with some of these intolerances. Sometimes we'll have to do an elimination diet. So when you think about it, if there's problems in the digestion and the gut barrier, this can trigger some antibodies, some antigens, some toxins, which can trigger inflammation. So we want to calm that system down there. We don't want that because once we calm, like calming a cut, once we calm our gut, then we're giving it time to heal. If you have some gut barrier issues, if you have some leaky gut, if you have whatever is going on, the calmness allows the healing process, which is going to allow better nutrient absorption, which is going to help. It's just a little picture of inflammation that I threw in there. I just wanted to show you this. IgG food allergies and weight. So if we look, this is a study, 30 obese and 30 normal children. The obese children had a 3-fold higher CRP, which was that inflammatory marker. Obese children had a significantly higher IgG antibodies directed against food and antigens. So, so some of the obese kids had these inflammatory markers. They had high CRP. They had more food intolerances. They showed antibodies to 277 foods. So, so we really need to look at are the foods we're eating creating the inflammation in our guts? Gluten-free, I just want people to realize gluten-free can be inflammatory too. So you really need to think about that. A lot of times gluten-free doesn't work with people because you're getting all the processed foods. You're going and getting the cookies and the pancakes and whatever, and you're not really replacing it with more of a whole food diet. And that's where the mistake can be with some people. So that's something to think about. If you've tried a gluten-free and it didn't work, it may be because you're still using processed fats, processed sugars, white flours in them. So that's something to think about. You know, maybe it isn't quite. There's different reasons why the wheat and the gluten bother people. So where do you start?
Point.
I'm sorry, what?
I said that's a great point. Thank you for saying that.
So I'm not sure where people are in their eating habits right now. This is a phase 1, very inflammatory. Mm-hmm. So chips, soda, not a lot of fruit. Phase 2, we're throwing a little bit of, getting out the soda. I'm just changing it to what a traditional American diet typically was. Skim milk, yogurt, changing it. Phase 2. Phase 3, we got out the milk. Still a little Greek yogurt. No processed grains really anymore. A lot more plant foods. Phase 4, lot more fats in phase 4. Very little grain, but I want to show you. They all have about the same amount of calories. Phase 4 has pretty much gluten-free, very low sugar, a lot of plant foods. But it is a lot higher in fat, but we're going to get a lot of those, the PUFAs, the MUFAs, which are the polyunsaturated, the monounsaturated, and saturated fat in this phase 4. Lot less processed though, more whole foods. We get 10 plant foods in there, very little grain, very little sugar. So that So I'm looking at what I look at when I want to look at an inflammatory diet. I want to make sure people are getting getting good protein in. I want to make sure people are getting good fats in. I want to make sure people are getting good colors in plants too. So those are the three big things. You know, you can live without a lot of the sugars and the grains, but you need to get the minerals, you need to get the protein, you need to get the fats, and you need to get those phytonutrients.
Well, I think that we've been told through the government that we need whole grains to survive. And I saw a film recently called In Search of the Perfect Diet, where they take some DNA evidence from bones from our ancestors that were before the advent of agriculture, and these guys survived a really long time and were bigger and stronger than we are now, with no grains.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. You know, and that's the concept with a lot of the paleo type diet now too. But I think, you know, I think grains can actually be a big source of inflammation for people. And the amount of grain that we have in our diet is just abundant. You know, it is the base of our diet, and it's been the base of our diet for a long time. I think people can still plan healthy amounts of whole food grains and have it non-inflammatory, but people have to be individualized with that. You know, I think some people can tolerate it, some people can't. But yeah, I mean, you're right. A typical diet would be bread for breakfast, bread at lunch, cookies and crackers for snacks, and pasta or noodles at dinner, because no one wants to make a whole food. You know, it's a lot easier to open the box. And so our diet has been a very processed grain diet, which, you know, sugar and processed grains, yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you want to do? You want to build the right foundation, so you want to shop. Go to your local farmers markets. You want to find a new way. You want to be happy with the new way that you're eating. You want to feel good about it. You want to know what you're eating is giving you that energy, that positive energy, because we know that energy can be a big part of our healing process. Examine your stress, your lifestyle. So make a list of what gives you that energy and what takes it away. Really sit on that. You know, because approach this in a realistic way. You know, begin to add color, begin to add healthy fats, you know, and even just reduce your flour in half if you're a person that eats a lot of flour right now. Try a new recipe every week. Exercise to comfort rather than to stress. Sleep, take care of your teeth, learn to breathe, play, laugh, meditate. Time in nature to ground yourself. Social support, find your community. Sense of meaning and purpose and passion in your life, maintain positive attitude, all those types of things. You bring your life into balance, you bring your food back into balance. You know, how we eat reflects how we live our lives. So we really need to join the two. So watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your habits. Watch your habits, they become your character. Watch your character, it becomes your destiny. So, and what I wanted to end with is bringing calmness to your mind, body, and your gut are ways to decrease inflammation. That, you know, just bringing that calmness to our lives is the first step in decreasing inflammation. I know that there's a study on mindful eating, that actually mindful eating is relaxing before you eat, and doing relaxing and mindful eating decreases inflammation in the gut a lot. So I couldn't think of the exact amount right now, but
well, I definitely have to work on that. I tend to eat and think of something else, and I got to work on that. So that's one of my to-do list things to work on.
There's a lot of research on that area. Yeah. So I do, you know, thank you very much, Karen, for allowing me to talk to your group and offering this. I do want to mention that I do have offers out there if people do want to take any advantage of anything that I am offering. So I'm offering a detox digestion in the gut 3-week class, which right now it's in person, so people have to do it if you're local, it's in my office. I'm doing a free body composition analysis also, if people want to take advantage of that. And I'm also doing a functional nutrition assessment, which I can do over, we can do it over the web if someone wants to take advantage of that. And there's my contact information. So.
Oh, that's fantastic, Sabina. And I know that you have already a very special, great, amazing price for your functional nutrition assessment for our local folks here. And I know that times will change and the price will go up in September. But could you tell people currently what your regular functional nutrition assessment fee is right now?
Yeah, it's $165 right now for 3 sessions.
Wow, that's a great deal. Oh my gosh. And now you get 25% off, and that's amazing. You can do it on you said by phone or by web, on web too, right?
Yep, I could do it through Skype or on the web or by phone. Yep.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your generosity. That's amazing. And so are people, can they take advantage of all 3 of the offers or just one of the 3?
They can take advantage of all 3. Yep.
Nice. Great. And folks, if you, on the right-hand side, you'll see that we have a little pop-up there with the red button that says I'm interested. And what that does is it goes to Sabina's website, her contact page. So in case you don't want to have a pen and you don't want to write it down, you can just click the button and it'll go straight to her contact page so you can take advantage of her offers, and definitely want to do that before the end of August. And wow, Sabina, you have given us so much amazing information. I mean, I was like, I need to write faster, but actually, I mean, I knew a lot of it already, so I'm kind of lucky that way, but this is amazing. I'm sure people will want to watch the replay a couple of times, just to let all that information sink in. So I really appreciate you for spending your time with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Well, cool. So I just want to thank everyone that's on the call. I know there's quite a few people that couldn't make it live tonight, but said they signed up anyway so they can watch the replay. And so the replay will be available for you, and as far as I know, it'll be available forever. The specials won't, but the replay will be available forever. So if you know anyone who would benefit from this information, I highly recommend that you send them a link to the replay. Let me just put my camera back on here. Great. So maybe we can, Sabina, maybe you can show your face again. If there's no other slide. And I'm just going to check the chat here. Does anybody have any other questions? Oh, I'm getting some thank yous. So Patricia says, thank you, Dr. Can and Sabine. Renee says, thank you, great information. Renee mentioned that she found Ezekiel sprouted bread, and she is doing well with that. So that's kind of cool. Yeah, awesome. Well, great. Well, thanks, everyone. Thank you, Sabina. And yeah, this is awesome. So make sure everyone, take advantage of the special if you can do it, because I think it's going to be really helpful to have that guide, and also because Sabina's doing that whole, foods and spirit connection. I think it's so important to not just look at just what you're eating, but your whole energy around it. And I'm an energy worker, so I know how important that is. All right, great. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Sabina. Bye for now.